In your project view, choose Create and JavaScript, and then rename the script Main Menu BTNS. And then once you've renamed it, double-click to open it in MonoDevelop. And then you're going to enter in the code you see here. This code, again, is available on the course Blackboard site in the Unity Units folder for this lesson. So take a look in there and you can just copy and paste it. Let's go through this really briefly, what's happening. So this main menu button script is actually going to perform a few actions. One thing it's going to do is it takes a public variable which is going to be the name of the main scene that we want to load when the player clicks on the play button. So whatever your main island scene is, that would be declared here or set here. Then we need to tell Unity which textures we want to use for the regular GUI image, like that play button image, and then the image we want to show when the player rolls their mouse over the image. That's what these two variables are. We're going to play a beeping sound when the player clicks on a button, and so we've got a variable declaring the audio clip that we're going to use. And then we've got a variable that we're going to set for the quit button. We're going to add a quit button to the menu, and it's kind of a funky bit of coding, but for this lesson at least, what we're going to do is we're simply going to use this same menu button script for each of the buttons we place on the screen, and we need to tell Unity if the button that the script is attached to is the quit button or not, and so that's what this variable is. Then we have a onMouseEnter function. This is really useful in Unity. This allows you to detect when the mouse rolls over a given object, either inside the virtual world or as a 2D object. And in this case, we're saying if we roll over the GUI texture where this script is attached, then we're going to change the texture to the rollover texture. And then similarly on the mouse exit, when the mouse leaves that texture, it will return back to the original texture that it used. Then we have an onMouseUp function. It's going to play the sound. It's going to pause briefly, and then it's going to check if it is if the GUI texture to which the script is attached is the quit button. If we've set that quit button variable to true, then the application will quit. Now this will only work again if this is a desktop version. It won't work on the web. And then this debug.log is just a nice piece of code that will send a message out to the console window, useful for when you're doing debugging. And that's what we've got. Otherwise, it has an else statement that just is checking if it's not the quit button. It's going to assume that the player has clicked on the play button, and then it's going to load the level. Okay. And the very last piece we have in here is a little hunk of code that will add a component to whichever object we attach the screen to, the script to, and the component it's going to add is the audio source component. So this is just, if you remember in a previous lesson, we used component and audio source from the menu and attached an audio source component directly to an object in our scene, to the door in our outpost, so that it could play a sound. In this case, we're doing the same thing, we're just doing it from within the script. So once you've got all those pieces pasted into your main menu button script, you can save it and close it out and then return back to Unity. Now we're inside Unity, we need to add that script to the play button. So let's go ahead and do that. From your project view, select the main menu button script and drag it on over to your menu play button in the hierarchy view. Once you've done that, select the menu play button object in the hierarchy and then look over to your inspector at the main menu button script, and we need to make some changes here so that that script will work. We've got to set some of these variables. The first one to set is the name of the level that you're going to load when the player clicks on play. That's going to be whatever the name is of your latest island scene. Mine was called, I'm going to remember what mine's called. I think it's Power Cell 2. Just a minute. Yeah, in my case, the name of the main scene is Power Cell 2. I'll name it right in there. Then I need to tell Unity what texture to use for the sort of default state of this play button. And to do that, I'm going to go back into my Book Assets folder in the project window, go to Textures, come down to the menu, Textures, and select Menu Play Button and drag that up here. And then I need to tell which is going to be the rollover texture. That's going to be Menu Play Button Over. And I need to let the script know what sound to play when the player clicks on the button. So I'll go to Book Assets, Sounds, and let's see, we'll do Menu Beep as our beep sound. And then I've got this quit button here, and it's not a quit button in this case, so I'll leave it unchecked. At this point, you should save your scene. And we need to do one more thing before this scene is going to work properly when we go to test it. And that is we need to tell Unity about the existence of whichever scenes we want to include in our build when we go to publish our project. So if you go to File and Build Settings, you're going to see something that looks like this. First, it's going to tell you which platform you're working on, and I'm using a web platform right now. If you change the platform from web player to a PC or Mac standalone, depending on how complex your scene is, it will take quite a while for Unity to make the necessary changes to the assets in your project, and it may occasionally give you errors if the scripts you've written are specific to the platform where you're going to publish. But we're not going to do that now. We're just going to stick with the web player. And what we need to do, though, in order for our menu scene and our main island scene to work in what we've just built, is to tell Unity which scenes to include in the build, and that's this window right here. So the first thing you can do to add this menu scene is click on Add Current. And when you do that, you'll see that it then adds the current scene into that Scenes to Build window. If you want to add other scenes, in this case we need to add our most recent island scene, you can go into the project view, locate that scene, in my case it's called Power Cell 2, and then drag and drop it up into that Scenes in Build window. And it's important when you do that you pay attention to the order in which you add them to the window. Right now the menu is the first scene to load, which is what we want, and then the power cell is listed second, which is also what we want. This is useful also as you develop more complex virtual worlds. It could be that the main scene you have is quite large, and often you'll create a splash screen scene and an instructions screen and these sorts of things that are much smaller. And for the web in particular, that's useful because those scenes will load on the screen quickly, and then you can have the main scene, which is going to be much bigger, loading in the background. We'll get into that in future lessons, but for now we just want to make sure we have them both in there and in the proper order. Alright, now that we've got that set, let's test out what we've got. Let's save our current scene and give it a test. So you see if I roll over the play button, it switches to the other texture, and if I click on it, then it drops me into my main island scene, which is what I wanted to do. So let's come back out, so far so good, into our menu scene, and now we're going to add a couple of more buttons to our menu. The next button we're going to add is an instructions button. for this lesson, this instructions button is not actually going to do anything. It's just giving you some practice in adding more GUI textures as buttons. So let's go to our project window, open up our book assets folder, come down into the textures subfolder, and then come all the way down to the menu instructions button and select that, and then go to game object, create other, and choose GUI texture. Now obviously the position is not quite what we'd want, so we'll go over to the inspector and we'll change our X position to 0.3, and we'll change our Y position to 0.45, and that will place it right underneath the play button. So we've got it in place, and we need to add the script to it so that it will react to the user clicking on it. And we're just going to use that same script. So in your project view, find your main menu button script, drag it on over to the instructions button in the hierarchy view. Then with that instructions button selected in the hierarchy, come over to the inspector, and you'll need to make changes again to the script so that it will work. In this case, it's not going to load a level, so you can leave that blank. But you do want to change the textures that you see when you click or roll over it. So back into the textures folder, down to the instructions textures. So I've got menu instructions button, that's going to be my normal texture. Menu instructions button over is my rollover texture. And we need to tell Unity what sound to play, which is that menu beep sound, if you remember, from the sounds folder. I'll drag that on over here. And then again, this is not a quit button either, so we'll just leave that unchecked. So now we're really moving. We're getting the hang of it. We're going to add one more button, which is going to be the quit button. So go in your textures folder in the project window, down to menu quit button, and select it. Then go to game object, create other, and GUI texture. Then we need to change the X and Y position, so X is going to be 0.3 and Y is going to be 0.35. That will place it right underneath the instructions button. And it's getting familiar, isn't it? Go back to your main menu buttons script, drag that over to the menu quit button object in the hierarchy view, and select that object in the hierarchy view, and yet again make the required settings to the variables in the script in the inspector. In this case, again, we're not going to load a level, so we can leave that blank. But we do need to change the textures, so we'll go back to the textures menu, choose menu quit button for the normal, menu quit button over for the rollover, select our menu beep for the sound, and now this button is the quit button, so we're going to select that as well so that Unity knows which button this is. Once you've done all that work, save your scene, and you can test it right in Unity. We tested it before, but I want to show you that nothing will happen with the instructions or quit, and show you what happens. So if I click play, if I click on instructions, nothing happens. I get an error that it can't load a level because it's attempting to load a level, but none has been named in the script. And then the quit button, we put in a little debug message saying this will work when published to the desktop. The last thing I want to do for this lesson is show you what actually happens with the quit button if this were published to the desktop, and also give a quick demonstration of what happens when you change from one platform to another. So let's do that now. If I go up to File and Build Settings, a moment ago I pointed out that we were on the web player platform. If I click on the PC and Mac standalone platform and check which one I'm going to, I'm running on a Mac, so I'll say Mac is my target. And then I click on Switch Platform. And in this case, nothing really happens because the code that I've got and the textures and all of that work the same on either. Again, when you get more complex projects, it could take quite a while to re-import a lot of the assets that you've created for a given platform will be modified when you move to another one. This is particularly true when you move from like a Windows build to an iOS or an Android build. Lots of changes take place. In this case, not much happened, but let me show you one change that did occur. Now, if I switch to a desktop build and I go to the game view and I click on the view drop-down box, you'll notice that the standalone size here has changed to 1024 by 768. All right. And when I do make that change, this is how the scene is going to look when I publish it to the desktop. And I'm going to go ahead and do that now so I can show you how the quit button works. So go to File and Build Settings one more time. Make sure I'm now on PC and Mac standalone and whichever platform you're on. And then I'm going to click Build and Run. And I'll call mine Windows Desktop or Menu Desktop for my project. And it's going to compile those scripts, build those levels, build the scene, process everything out. And then we'll be able to go and take a look at it. So let's see what it looks like. Alright, you'll notice when you build for the desktop that you'll get this window that pops up at the beginning. In your build settings, you can decide whether or not you want to see this. This is a configuration for the end user where they can choose different screen resolutions, choose how good the quality of the graphics are, and so on. Depending on your needs, if you were to publish to the desktop, you could decide whether you really wanted this or not. I typically choose not to show it, and in a future lesson I'll show you how to modify whether or not this shows. But in our case, we'll leave it, and I'll change my graphic quality to fantastic, and I'll hit play. When I do that, here we are now on the desktop version of it. Now if I click quit, it's going to exit right out of the application. And so that's how that works. So that's the end of this lesson. For your next Unity assignment, I want you to go ahead and create this menu scene that's then going to load in to Unity. You don't actually have to turn this in yet, though. What we're going to do is, this is part one of the lesson. In part two, we're going to learn how to use OnGUI. It's a nice built-in functionality in Unity for creating lots of different kinds of GUI windows inside Unity, and then I'll have you turn in that version. So for now, just save what you've got here and then be ready for the next lesson next time.